Frank's deep love for animals and his fascination with studying their behavior made it particularly strange for him when he stumbled upon a group of squirrels tightly woven together. Rather than fleeing as expected, the woodland creatures remained motionless. As he approached, Frank was astonished to find them standing over a pendant, a necklace he immediately recognized. This discovery raised numerous questions, especially regarding the squirrels' unusual behavior. Who did the pendant belong to? How had it been lost? And most importantly, why were the squirrels so protective of it? Frank had recently transitioned to a suburban lifestyle, a move he quickly grew to love. The surrounding areas were enchanting, abundant with nature, and his neighbors were exceptionally friendly. He admired how the community respected nature, especially the elderly woman across the street. She always had ample food for the critters, who sometimes waited in front of her home. Frank often exchanged greetings with Mrs. Catherine, who kindly reciprocated. Despite his desire to discuss the animals with her, he understood her preference for solitude and respected it. Today seemed like the right time to approach her. However, as he closed his door and glanced at her house, he noticed a troubling sight. The animals that usually gathered on her porch were missing. Deer, rabbits, and even raccoons, all absent. Frank had grown accustomed to their presence, making their sudden absence even more unsettling. Frank calmly made his way over to the lady's home, but as he passed a tree standing in front of her home, he saw the strangest sight. He had seen a myriad of animals here and in the area, but he had never seen them behave like this before. There, underneath the tree, was a bunch of squirrels, not just casually around the tree. No, these creatures almost seemed as if they were huddled around something together. They were standing over something. It seemed he caught a glimpse of something metallic reflecting the light before it got buried underneath the squirrels again. It almost seemed as if they were guarding it. Frank crouched down and slowly made his way to the bunch of squirrels. Frank had expected the squirrels to scatter as soon as they saw him, something that, to them, could only be a giant coming near them. Instead, the animals stayed put. However, as Frank's hand came close to the squirrel, one larger fellow jumped towards it, and before Frank could withdraw his hand, its teeth sank into his skin. With a shriek, Frank fell back, holding his hand close to his chest. He had never been bitten by a squirrel before. He had no clue they could be this territorial about an object. Frank was unsure what to do. Did he have to call animal control? Maybe he could ask the nice lady in her home. Frank grabbed a long wooden stick. He tried whistling the object in between the squirrels' bodies. He surely hoped that this would work. He scraped the stick across the ground until he saw the cord come from underneath the squirrels. As they confusedly parted ways, Frank felt a pang of dread. It was the pendant he had often seen the elderly lady wear. Maybe she had lost it. Deciding to leave the squirrels be, he approached the woman's porch and expectantly rang the doorbell. Each second felt longer than the last as Frank waited, hoping for the familiar sound of her footsteps or the creaking of her door. Shadows of doubt crept into Frank's mind. Mrs. Catherine, always so punctual in her routines, was uncharacteristically absent. He tried to reassure himself. Maybe she was in the garden or had gone out, but the weight of the pendant in his pocket served as a heavy reminder that something was amiss. Moving to the window, Frank cautiously peered inside, hoping to catch a glimpse of Mrs. Catherine. But the curtains, usually drawn open to let the sun in, obscured his view, revealing only vague silhouettes and the play of shadows. Conversations among clustered neighbors painted a picture of shared concern. The gathered crowd of neighbors grew. Their faces mirrored Frank's worry, their conversations a mix of concern and confusion. Mrs. Catherine was well loved, her absence deeply felt. Whispers and speculations filled the air, from the benign to the worrisome. Everyone felt a collective pull to do something, to find answers. Pooling their efforts, Frank and a few brave neighbors managed to unlock the door to Mrs. Catherine's residence. Taking a collective deep breath, they cautiously stepped over the threshold. Frank's heart raced, the pendant from earlier acting as a heavy weight, anchoring him to the urgency of the situation. The once cozy interior of Mrs. Catherine's home was a stark contrast to Frank's memories. Furniture overturned, personal items strewn about, and an unmistakable aura of disturbance dominated the scene. When it was Frank's turn, he recounted the odd behavior of the squirrels, the discovery of the pendant, and the haunting silence that greeted him at Mrs. Catherine's. The officers listened intently, marking down every detail, the pendant catching their keen eyes as a potential piece of the bigger picture. With meticulous precision, the police team combed through the house. While many were astounded by the pendant's intricate design, Frank felt compelled to set the record straight. "It's not about its monetary value," he said with emphasis. "It's what it symbolizes for Mrs. Catherine." The crowd listened intently, sensing the depth of the sentiment attached to the delicate jewelry piece. Elderly neighbors with a nostalgic glint in their eyes recounted stories they had heard from Mrs. Catherine herself. She'd often reminisce about the pendant, a gift from a long-lost love. Volunteers, armed with flashlights and determination, searched tirelessly from the town's outskirts to the dense nearby woods. Every conceivable location was scoured. Mrs. Catherine's face displayed on posters seemed to watch their efforts silently, urging them on. Amidst the whirlwind of speculations, Mr. Larson, an elderly shopkeeper, stepped forward with a tremor in his voice. He spoke of a nondescript van he'd seen parked nearby on the day of the incident. It hadn't caught his attention initially, but its lingering presence in the vicinity raised his suspicions. While most would have dismissed it, Mr. Larson, ever the meticulous observer, had jotted down the vehicle's license plate number. As he revealed the scribbled numbers to the anxious crowd, murmurs spread. With a newfound lead in hand, officers sprung into action. Time was of the essence. The license plate details were relayed to the department, leading to an intensified pursuit. Patrol cars crisscrossed the town, their sirens echoing the urgency of the hunt. Hours of sifting through records and cross-referencing databases finally paid off. A potential owner, an address, and connections emerged. The looming trees and dense underbrush hid secrets, and the police intended to unveil them ahead. Through the dense foliage, the faint glimmer of lights hinted at a structure. As the team approached the cabin, an unexpected sight met their eyes. Wildlife, predominantly squirrels, seemed to be keeping a vigilant watch around the structure. Their presence and peculiar behavior were strikingly similar to Frank's earlier encounter with the creatures in town. The forest surrounding them lay silent, yet from the wooden structure ahead, faint, muffled sounds emerged. Were they voices? With practiced precision, officers quickly spread out, ensuring all escape routes were covered. The element of surprise was on their side, leaving no chance for those inside. When the cabin door creaked open, a scene of despair and hope unfolded in the dimness. Mrs. Catherine sat bound but resilient in the room's corners. Two figures emerged from the shadows, their plans foiled. Within moments, they were detained, their intentions thwarted by the determined team. The town's atmosphere shifted from anxiety to celebration as news of Mrs. Catherine's rescue spread. Welcoming her back, the residents expressed their joy and relief through tearful embraces and cheers. Frank, with a beaming smile, was at the forefront, embodying the town's collective sentiment. Amid the jubilation, Frank approached Mrs. Catherine, the pendant in hand. As she took it, holding the symbol of hope and memories, their journey came full circle. This wasn't merely a tale of disappearance. It highlighted the strength of community ties, enduring hope, and the indomitable human spirit. What do you think this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.